Hello and welcome back to True Crime Guys podcast. But no. As you know, if you're not hearing Lauren's voice, this is not a typical episode of True Crime Guys. It's that time again, guys. It's the time to give the freeloaders a little taste. Patrons, okay? We're just giving them a little taste. It's Christmas after all. It's Christmas in 2020. The least we can do is give them one more taste of the Patreon goodness before this crazy-ass year closes out. And what better case to do it with than the Kentucky Cannibal Boone motherfucking Helm. Okay? The Carl Panzram of the Wild West, if you will. Not to mention I did a cover of Hall Oats Man-Eater in this one, so that was fun. So, guys, sit back, relax, and enjoy this blast from the past. All the way back to June. It's been a long year.
Many's the poor devil I've killed at one time or another, and the time has been that I've been obliged to feed on some of them. The Kentucky Cannibal, Levi Boone Helm. He'll only come out at night, the lean and hungry type. Nothing is new, I've seen him here before. Watching and waiting, oh, he's sitting with you, but his eyes are on the door. So many I paid to see what you think you're getting for free. The man is wild, tamed by the purr of a jaguar. Money's the matter, if you're in it for gold, you ain't gonna get too far. Oh, here he comes. Watch out, boy, he'll chew you up. Oh, here he comes. He's a man-eater. Oh, here he comes. Watch out, boy, he'll chew you up. Oh, here he comes. He's a man-eater. If I were you, I know what he can do. He's a deadly man, he could really rip your world apart. Mind over matter, oh, the beauty is there, but a beast is in the heart. Oh, here he comes. Watch out, boy, he'll chew you up. Oh, here he comes. He's a man-eater. Oh, here he comes. Watch out, boy, he'll chew you up. Oh, here he comes. He's a man-eater.
All right, let's talk about Boone Helm.
Boone Helm. Old
Boone
Kentuckian.
Helm. Yeah, the Kentucky Cannibal.
The Kentucky Cannibal.
Last week we talked about man sandwiches, or not so much man sandwiches, woman sandwiches, I guess, more appropriate.
That's more accurate, right?
Human sandwiches.
There we go.
And so for the second straight week, we're going to go cannibal on y'all because you're fine patrons, you're paying customers, and
That's
you know what? We got a lot of good feedback on cannibalism last week, so
right. So we figured we'd give you guys a double dose of cannibalism.
yeah, and Wild West, so you can't go wrong with the Wild West and
Wild
cannibalism.
West ones, they're always fun because they're so old. People don't get offended. It's great.
Right. Yeah. You know, last week our culprit was feeding sandwiches his victims as kind of a means of body disposal, I guess. Mm-hmm. I think that was kind of his prime motivation. And he's just sick. He got off on the idea that people were unknowingly eating these sandwiches.
Yeah, I think it was a way of him to kind of jab back at society.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whereas this guy Boone, his motivations were Levi Boone Helms, who we're talking about, the Kentucky Cannibal. That was the book that we got by Ryan Green, the Kentucky Cannibal. It's available on Audible. Fantastic read. I liked it a lot. I don't know what you thought.
Ryan Green is a great author.
He is. You know what? I think we got off to a bad start with him because the first one, Ryan Green book I got,
Mockingbird,
was the Mockingbird Hill Massacre, and I think he went with a different feel on that one, where he spoke through the killer's perspective a lot, and I was like not really into that because it's like we don't know what he was thinking necessarily or what he said to himself while he was doing this, and Ryan Green tried to act like he did.
Well, if you notice, he kind of did that a little bit in the Boone Helm book, but I think we accept it more because it's so old. We're like, we kind of need these pieces filled in, whereas with Mockingbird Massacre, we really didn't. I'm like, dude, this took place in the 70s, 80s? If I remember correctly. I'm like, we don't need all this extra stuff. I think we have enough to kind of gain to understand. But when you're writing a book about the Old West, I feel like it fits more naturally into the novel, if that makes sense, because there's so many missing pieces. You see what I'm saying? So I don't really get
fill in a lot of gaps.
Exactly.
And you go into it expecting that when you do a Wild West. You expect that there's going to be some folklore and some hearsay involved.
Yes. Going to be a little hyperbole here and there, and that's just what it is.
But that's what makes it great, right?
That's it.
That's the thing about ancient history too. Like Dan Carlin talks about that a lot in that podcast, Hardcore History.
Great podcast.
He talks a lot about like the ancient authors and stuff, how they were doing it back then. You know, like Julius Caesar, when you'd write about his battles and stuff, like a lot of times it was written by the people who won, you know?
Right.
And they were making themselves look even better.
Yeah,
so,
exactly. You know what's funny, dude, is that's a common understanding, right? Most people understand that Wild West stories that took place during medieval times, 1700s, whatever, 1600s, they understand the hyperbole, the exaggeration. But for some reason, when it comes to the Bible, nobody gets that, even though it's even older.
Yeah,
it's like you don't think there's hyperbole and exaggeration in there.
That is a very good point. That book is super old, and it's kind of the older you, like we said, the further you go back, the more that you're expected to understand. I think that was kind of the way they did things back then too. It wasn't like they were documenting history necessarily step by step. This is exactly what he said and she said. It was, like we said, most of the time written by the victors if it came to wartime stories or anything like that.
Right. And, not only is like a lot of books, especially the Bible, have been exaggerated, but it's been translated multiple times. So imagine that.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, there's so many variables there in a lot of these old stories. You kind of have to just take it for what it is, and you believe a certain percentage of it, and some of it you got to take it in stride.
So that being said, what percentage of Boone Helm's story would you say you believe?
Man, I would say at least 70 to 75%.
I agree.
Somewhere around there.
I think it's mostly correct. I think some of the details, and there's obviously some hyperbole and some flavor added in to make it even more interesting.
Right.
But all in all, like, it was just chaos to live back then. And this was the type of guy that embraced the chaos and wanted it and traveled around looking for it. He covered some ground. Like, he went from state to state to state, way up north into Canada, like way up into British Columbia, and caused some havoc up there. I mean, he got around, and he would bounce around, and he actually kind of like circled around a few times, like went through the same states again, and was like, hey, I'm back to fuck shit up again for a minute, and then I'll be gone again,
Living that outlaw life, man.
Yeah, his story's nuts. Yeah. So let's dive into him. Boone Helm, man, a very interesting figure. And like we said, we've done a couple of Wild West cases, but those guys had redeeming qualities. Billy the Kid and Wild Bill Hickok. This guy was the anti-hero. If they were the heroes of the Wild West, he was the anti-hero. He was all bad,
this guy was
no
like
good.
A bloody bender.
Boone Helm was bad. Yeah, exactly. He was bad, and nothing in the world could have ever had made him anything but bad. He was, by birth and breeding, low, coarse, cruel, animal-like, and utterly depraved, and for him no name but ruffian can fitly apply. So that was from an article that I kind of pulled out of an article about Boone Helm explaining him. He was born on January 28th, 1828 in Kentucky. He shares a birthday with Rick Ross, Elijah Wood, and Alan Alda.
Man, what a crew.
I say we do this every time now, where we go over the birthdays and then we do three and we pick our favorite of the three and then we explain why.
Yeah.
I'm going Alan Alda. I like Alan Alda.
Oh, you're going
a
old
lot.
school. Okay.
Yeah.
Rick Ross has some killer one-liners and songs, bro. But I really like Lord of the Rings. I'm not a huge Elijah Wood fan, but, I'm glad he's in the Lord of the Rings. I guess he's a good Frodo.
If you love the Lord of the Rings, I mean, you have to give some credit to the main character.
Yeah, somewhat, yeah.
Alan Alda, though, super underrated.
Yeah, he's from MASH, right?
Comedic actor. Yeah, but he's hilarious in a bunch of comedies. Like, if you haven't, he was in that show Bored to Death. Freaking hilarious in that. He was in Wanderlust. Or no, I'm thinking of Ted Danson was in. Sorry, I kind of confused him and Ted Danson, two old white guys.
Yeah, Alan Alda's like 83 years old now.
Yeah, you know what? He was in Wanderlust, though. He was really funny in that. He was in the wheelchair. He owned like their commune or whatever.
Okay.
But yeah, he was in MASH, which was always on TV in my household growing up. My parents always had MASH on. That music will always just play on repeat in my head.
Yeah, dude, a lot of stations played MASH too. Like they're just has.
You want to talk about an adult show? Like there's nothing for kids in that at all. Like you don't understand the humor. It's just like they're hanging out in tents. Yeah. You're just like, what is? I don't understand why my parents.
Oh my god! As a kid,
it didn't seem funny. It was just like,
dude. As a kid, I would rather have just went to church. Like, oh my god, MASH was just so boring.
Dude, it was the worst thing to have on, right? The music, it was just, there was nothing.
Can we watch Andy Griffith at least? Like, what the hell is this?
Yeah, and like, I didn't understand Seinfeld when I was a kid, and they had that on a lot, and I kind of, but at least there was some silly stuff that would happen every now and then.
Right.
Whereas like MASH, they're just like over a person on a gurney. They're in a tent. Like I just didn't understand what the hell what was going on.
I didn't either. I still don't, dude. I don't think I've watched enough MASH even now. At my age to really understand the whole concept of the show, but I do remember them always being intense. It's a military show. Yeah, that's about it. And I do remember his face.
I think it was the Korean War, if I'm not mistaken.
That's probably pretty accurate.
Anyways, I mean, I grew to Seinfeld's like my favorite show now. So I mean, maybe if I revisited MASH, it would be the same situation.
Dude, I think,
where I'd love it.
Listen, anything that runs as long as those shows do, if you go back and you follow it along,
there's something good. There's got to be something to it, right? Cheers, the same thing. I was too young to really ever give it to understand it, so I never really. Once I became an adult, I was like, wow, would I go watch that?
Yeah, but there's something to those shows, man. People could say what they want, like anything that lasts that long and crosses that many generations. There's something to the show. There just is. You're just not taking the time to look, and that's fine. You don't have to. There's plenty of shit out there to watch and listen to. But.
So back to Boone. Boone Helm, born in 1828, as we mentioned, and he was one of 12 children. I think he was the seventh. I think the book said he was the seventh or the eighth.
Hanging out right in the middle, window, right where they get forgotten.
Yeah. He was in the middle of the dozen.
Right.
He was the half dozen. His family was considered honest, hardworking, and respectful. However, they never got ahead during their days in Kentucky due to the fact that they had arrived too late. And that's kind of the tale of the Wild West in those days. The victor go the spoils. Whoever got there first, like the early bird got the worm. Maybe that's where that whole saying came from, because that was the truth when it came to the Wild West. Was whoever got to a territory first was usually gifted land for free, and then land became the best commodity you could have over time as more and more people flooded there.
Like long-term wealth.
Those who owned land. Yeah, that's how. I mean, you start working your land. You get other people to work the land for you, and guess what? The people that arrived after you are the ones that are going to be working your land for menial wages, and that was the story with the Helms. Unfortunately, his dad never could get ahead, and no matter how hard he worked and saved, they stayed extremely poor. Their kids were on the verge of starvation at all times. Tattered clothing. So when they heard about land being given to the first arrivals in Missouri, Helm's family packed up and moved there when he was still a boy. The Helms were able to get their hands on a plot of land there that they picked out along a beautiful river. It sounded like a great spot that they were able to grab. Little did they know that they would lose it all because of Boone later on. But they were finally able to kind of get the life that they were dreaming of, the American dream. They got their hands on their own land and started working it. It was close. It was close to a major city at the time, but it was also like it was on that cusp of like on the line between the Wild West and the mountains and the trails and all that, and then a major city. So they could always go and find work in the city. The kids could go there and live that life, or they could live the Wild West life. It was kind of perfect in that sense that it was up to them. We know which way Boone went.
Obviously.
So, yeah. Early on, Boone loved demonstrating feats of strength and agility, and would goad men into fights to impress others by throwing his Bowie knife into the ground and retrieving it from a horse at a full gallop. This sounds like the Billy the Kid tales of when he was training with his gun and he could swing underneath the horse and shoot a can and all that.
Well, it's just about being young and
Boone was
spry,
into the same kind of thing.
and they grew up fast. So these boys grew up, with the mentality of an older man, but they have the body of an 18-year-old. It's like, of course they're going to be doing crazy shit like this. Just riding the horse and throwing your knife, which wasn't enough. You get bored. There
are those rough kids that grow up poor, and they grow up outside, and they're just like different. We just actually got a puppy. A little side story. We just got a puppy, and we went out to Logandale, Nevada, to get it, which is pretty far from us. It's like an hour and a half drive. But like the family we got the puppy from, the kids just kind of like live outside. It's like there's this girl who's 3 years old, the same age as my son. She's up in this big ass tree, and like she was almost hurting like all the other kids there was like 3 or 4 other kids there, 2 of mine. And it was like I had to keep my eye on this girl. It's a 3-year-old girl, and she was like almost hurt my kids a few times because she was just rough, barefoot, climbing trees, and I was just like, damn. Like, so I think it was that magnified times 1,000 being a kid in the Wild West. Like you there's nothing. I mean, obviously there's no technology either. So back then there was just they're probably eating whatever scraps they could find, and just they're living like wild animals out there.
This Logandale, Nevada, is this north of you?
Yeah. They do the fair out there every year, the Logandale Fair. It's still really hot. Like it's actually, I think it's hotter.
So it's probably
Vegas.
A lower elevation, but it's north of you.
But it's like
as far as in the state.
Yeah,
I got you.
Yeah, it's actually a lot of farmland and stuff. It's kind of cool. Like you have to check it out when you come back.
I will. It's interesting.
It's kind of cool. It's like everybody has huge plots of land, and there's a lot of farming actually going on out there. A lot of tractors and crops.
Dude, kids
and all
can
kinds
adapt,
of stuff,
man.
So it's kind of
Kids
cool.
can adapt better than anybody. At 3 years old, like that's just life for her. That's just what it is.
Right. Yeah. So yeah, that was the kind of the rough upbringing Boone was a part of in the Wild West. He hung out with older boys as well. He was that kid, that tough kid that was hanging out with the older boys, and they were actually kind of afraid of him because of the nature that he had. He actually intimidated the older boys into submission anytime they said something to him he didn't like, and they feared him due to his ruthlessness. He wasn't necessarily capable of beating the older boys in a fisticuffs fight, one-on-one, mano-a-mano, like, fair fight, essentially. He wasn't about that. And he never was. He didn't care how he won. It was about
he was
winning
the sucker punch
to him.
king.
And yeah, he's like, if he wins a fight by sucker punch and everybody's like, well, he sucker punched him, he's like, I don't care. I won. He's down. I'm standing.
Well, because
so
he wasn't doing it. Yeah,
that's
because
how
he wasn't
was.
doing it for notoriety. He was doing it for his own, just like this little itch inside his brain.
Yeah. For other people to fear him. That's all that mattered. Other people feared him. That's all he cared about. It doesn't matter if the means or it's a means to an end, whatever. How the end result is all he cared about.
Weak. Did not want to look weak at all.
Yeah. Yep. Boone, from a young age, learned that might made right and would almost never lose a fight because anyone that was a threat, he would catch off guard and pummel them while they were most vulnerable. On several occasions, his friends had to pull him off of someone in their own group, one of their own friends, for fear that Boone was going to kill them. He was going to continue to beat them until they were dead. And he most likely would have had they not pulled him off.
He was that kid that didn't know how to play fight, man. You always had that one kid that's just like, everybody's fighting, everybody's wrestling, everything's good.
Everything's
life or death for them. And all of a sudden he gets hit, and then he just wants to he picks up a stick or some shit and tries to beat people with it. It's like, relax, bro.
What's weird, though, is that I know what you're saying, but I think he was different in that he would just take note and then he would wait for them to be vulnerable. He was more calculated. He wasn't really a guy that would react on rage and like snap and go crazy on someone.
That's true.
He was more like, okay, you said that? All right, cool. And then like 3 hours later, after the other kids have gone home, he just comes up behind him with that stick you were talking about and just fucking bashes his kneecap in.
Because he's just been stewing on it for this whole time. He's just letting it fester in his brain. Yeah. He just couldn't let that shit go.
Yep. Yep. And he wanted a 100% chance of winning. So it's like he's going to wait until it's the perfect time. There was never a person or group that Boone answered to willingly, even law enforcement. In one incident, which demonstrated his contempt for authority, Boone on horseback rebuffed the sheriff's attempt to arrest him and walked his horse upstairs at the courthouse into the courtroom while circuit court was in session and argued his innocence to the judge. So he just took his horse. He liked to take his horse indoors. He really liked to do that to make a point.
Look how big and strong you look while you're on a fucking horse. You walk in there and everyone's looking
exactly,
up to
right?
you. I mean, that's exactly.
It's also kind of hard to arrest you when you're on a horse.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, it is.
It's like they start coming over to, all right, we're gonna have to, we're gonna have to subdue you because you just rode a horse into court, and then he just rides off on the horse. What are they gonna do? Yeah, exactly.
Throwing Bowie knives at your feet while he's taking off.
Yeah. Following this and other incidents, the sheriff in the area began following Boone around on a daily basis, like constant surveillance of him, waiting for him to slip up so he could lock him away. This is the time like when Boone was a teenager, in his hometown, and he's just making waves. It was around this time that Boone got hitched, and I think it was partly calculated. The book kind of insinuated that he did this as a means to kind of get pressure off of him. It made it look like he was settling down because everyone that knew him was surprised that he got married. He just didn't seem like the type. He wasn't really a marriage type. He liked to screw around with the girls in town that liked the bad boy, but apparently eventually he married 17-year-old Lucinda Browning in 1848 and soon fathered a daughter with her. Lucinda had played hard to get with him for a while and only gave in to his persistence when he proposed marriage. So once he showed that he was serious, I guess, and she saw a chance to tie down the local bad boy, and she's like, ooh, I can actually marry the guy that no one can seem to get a grasp on. And he seemed sweet when he was proposing marriage and whatnot. However, the second day, it seemed exactly. As soon as the vows were said and they left the ceremony, Lucinda met the real Boone Helm. He had become known after this for his heavy drinking, riding his horse into the house, and beating his wife on the regular. So he basically he held on to that grudge, as we had just talked about, when she would turn him down all those years, that he would kind of come on to her and stuff, and she was playing hard to get or whatever. He had held on to that, and the second he got married to her, he basically would beat and rape her, and there was nothing that could be done in those times. There was no such thing as marital rape.
Ownership.
They were like, you married a woman back then, and women were basically like second-class citizens, and it was like, he owns you. How could he rape you? You married him.
Right.
And so it was basically a living hell from the second that they got hitched. And she was counting her days until she actually the book makes it sound like she had kind of given into the idea that he was going to kill her eventually, and she was trying to tell family members and law enforcement, and no one was doing anything about it because they all had that same viewpoint of being married to a man is like he owns you. And so when Boone had some friends come up to him and offer a trip to go mining, there was supposedly some gold that had been found in some location, and he left for a little while. She made plans and really set things up and got a lawyer and got divorce papers written up and everything. And by the time he returned, he was hit with that. So yeah, his family, actually, Boone's family actually backed up Lucinda on this, knowing Boone's character. And that's what I kind of like briefly mentioned, that his father they'd found this plot of land in Missouri and everything was fantastic for a long time. They'd gotten the life they wanted. And then when Boone's wife, Lucinda, took him to court during their divorce, basically his father, Boone's father, stepped in and paid her and gave up everything that they had worked for all those years. They lost their land and money and all that stuff through this divorce.
Because now he had a granddaughter in this as well. So he felt obligated to take care of her. She was a Helm after all. And your family name was really all you had, to pass down. Yeah,
and Boone's father still liked the old ways of, a man having honor and all that stuff, whereas his son was a scoundrel who didn't. So, yeah. The violence that grew to such an extent that Lucinda petitioned for divorce. His father paid for the cost of the divorce, having bankrupted his father and ruined his family's reputation. Boone then decided to move to California, so he decides to take off after that. After he's wrecked his family,
but he don't give a shit,
and burned all the bridges he had in his hometown. I mean?
He's free again.
Yeah.
He's good to go. He done got the law off his back and all that shit. The divorce is final. Like, this is what he wants. This is what he wanted all along. Because remember, he just got married in the first place just to let the heat die down.
Exactly. Yeah, I agree 100%. It's not like he loved her. She was just, like a piece of trash to him, a piece of property that he owned, that he could do what he wanted with. So by the time he was grown, and soon after his marriage in 1850, the great gold craze of California broke out. So you got the gold rush.
Oh, yeah.
And it's just shortly after that. And he decides to head for Cali in search of gold. However, he wants someone to accompany him, or at least he wants some property. You could look at this one of two ways. The evidence would point that this was a premeditated murder. So the story goes, he goes to his cousin, a man named Little Burry Shoot. Hell of a name. He takes him to a bar, and they're getting schnockered, they're getting drunk, and Boone's asking his cousin Little Barry if he would accompany him, and he's telling him accompany him to Texas.
Yeah.
And really, Boone's planning to go to California. So he's doing this publicly in a bar, saying, hey, come to Texas with me, cousin, come to Texas. Eventually, Little Barry, even though he doesn't want to, agrees. They've been drinking. Sometimes you agree to shit you don't want to when you're drinking. So in the morning, when Boone hit Little Barry with, so we're heading off to Texas, right, cousin? He knew that Little Barry, what the answer was going to be, because Little Barry hadn't packed up anything. He was still quite comfy in his home with all of his stuff around him. And Little Barry's basically simple answer to that question was no, which was responded by Boone with a knife to the heart. He basically stabbed him straight through the heart, killing him instantly. And this, as far as we could tell, was his first murder, and it was clearly premeditated. He had set up an alibi or kind of made it harder for himself to be tracked down by talking so loudly in the bar about running off to Texas with his cousin. And then when his cousin's found, where do you think they're going to go? They're going to look for him in Texas. That's where he was talking about going. So
Boone was thinking that it's a win either way, because let's say he does pack up and go to Texas, right? Mm-hmm. Well, he was probably planning on going through Texas. And now that he's not wanted for murder, you can take your time. But he's probably thinking, by the time I get to Texas, I'm probably going to be hungry. Or I'm probably going to need supplies. Or I'm going to need this or whatever. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So that's why I think Texas was the destination. Just knowing how sadistic he is, I feel like he'd be like, yeah, follow me to Texas. Then when we get to Texas, I'm going to eat your ass to get to California. You know what I mean? It just kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
In a way. I know he's in Missouri, but maybe he wanted to go, or maybe he was just going to, use him on his way out there. He did, and nobody likes to be alone.
Right.
Even sociopaths.
Yeah.
But I think he just dealt with people the wrong way when he got tired of them. Instead of just splitting ways, he had to off them.
Yeah, I agree. I think if Little Barry would have gone, then he wouldn't have killed him then. He would have probably killed him later. But
yeah, when he needed to.
Yeah. Yeah.
But he was going to kill him either way. You're right. Totally premeditated.
It was a matter of time.
Right.
So he's on his way to California. Little Barry's brother and friends pursued and captured Boone not long after this, however. This is Boone's first attempt at really leaving his hometown area. In Missouri, he made a name for himself there and all that stuff, and he'd gotten into a lot of trouble, but he had never experienced life on the trails, long riding, days on end without food. And so he really didn't pack enough provisions for this trip. He packed one little canteen of water. He didn't bring enough food for his horse, all that stuff that you have to think ahead on. He didn't do. And so it didn't take long for Little Barry's brother and friends to capture him. They went on the trail, and he was found really not that far away. His horse was tied to a tree, and his horse was dead. He himself was face down. He was found face down in basically a dry lake bed, the mud. He was trying to suck the water out of the mud. That's how desperate he had gotten. He was going to die out there. They actually basically saved his life by finding him and bringing him in custody.
Damn. Should have just left him.
Yeah, you really would have avoided a lot further grief for a lot of other people. A lot of other people wouldn't have been murdered had they just, waited another day. Maybe he probably would have dehydrated out there and died.
Yeah, his horse is dead.
Yeah.
How far is he really going to walk?
Mm-hmm.
Just leave his ass.
Yeah. So his pursuers were angry during their search and wanted him hung, but once in captivity, his antics quickly landed him in an asylum for the mentally deranged. And this was, once again, premeditated. He really always thought ahead. That's one thing you can give him credit for, is that he always was one step ahead of people. Yeah,
but I think that's just because he was willing to do what no one thought people would do. Because,
100%.
like I said, he didn't give a shit about honor. He
No.
didn't give a shit about integrity.
And in a time where people
his
were
reputation.
almost everyone, that's all they had was their reputation and their
That's
honor
all
and
they
everything.
had.
It caught them off guard that a guy would act the way that he acted, just
blew their
just
mind.
to win in a sense.
Right. That's exactly.
So yeah,
right.
he had known he was either going to die out there or he was going to be captured, right? And so he had gotten this plan that if he was captured, that he was going to act crazy from the jump, and he just act nuts. He just rambled to himself the whole time he was in captivity, all night long. Like the book said that he didn't even really he kept them up all night rambling to himself. He wouldn't sleep. And they came into the courtroom and told the judge, that they thought he was crazy, and the judge agreed, and they basically put him in an asylum.
Everybody was crazy then.
Yeah.
Shit.
So he's back in Missouri at this point, and he's at this asylum where he became reserved and quickly became a staff favorite. So everything's calculated. He became crazy to get put in this place, and then once he gets in this place, he acts normal, quiet. Just acts like a a normal good guy, and all the staff
because
there
he's
likes
being
him.
replenished.
Yeah,
he's being replenished. He's being nursed back to health.
Mm-hmm.
He's got a roof over his head. He's got food. He's got water. He's got everything he needs.
Yep.
I mean, you just ride this out until you're strong again. I mean, and then might makes right all over again.
However, he was never supposed to get out. He was supposed to basically stay at this place for the rest of his life. But of course, he quickly devised this plan. After winning over members of the staff at the asylum, he eventually convinced his guard to take him on walks through the woods each evening. After these walks became routine, Helm he kept pushing the boundaries a little bit. He got to the point where every night when they'd get to this patch of woods, he would ask the guard if he could go off and take a pee. So that'd give him a little bit of distance to plan an escape route and also
right. And then he would come back.
Yeah, he would come back
time after time. Yeah, gain trust.
Yep. And eventually, he didn't come back one evening. He took off. Took advantage of the guard's trust, and he intended to continue his travels west to California. And the guard didn't the book say the guard didn't even tell his bosses at the asylum because he didn't want to get fired, and also it was just going to look bad on the asylum that an inmate got away, and they were already there were so many people there that it was hard to even keep track of. And they just assumed
sure that was.
Because it was winter in Missouri and there was snow and everything else that he was going to die out there anyway. He was going to either be eaten by animals or because this asylum was strategically placed, really isolated in an isolated location, far from any cities and stuff. So the odds of anyone, even if they do get away, actually surviving were almost nothing. But what they didn't take into account was that Boone was very lucky in that he always found someone willing to help him out. In more ways than one, but he always seemed at the most opportune moment when he really needs it most. Some person would come along and be really kind-hearted and help him and take him along, feed him, provide him shelter and a bed, and he would end up a lot of times eating that person.
Yep, after taking everything they had or whatever they had to offer.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's brutal, man.
So
no remorse.
Yeah. So after escaping the asylum, planning to head to California. He'd basically have frozen and starved to death if it weren't for the help of an old lone prospector that was kind enough to take him in and take him along on his travels west for gold. It didn't take long, however, for the prospector to catch Boone one night going through his belongings. A scuffle ensued in which the prospector got the upper hand, knocking Boone down to the ground with his first punch. However, he didn't and definitely should have finished the job after this. He let Boone lay there on the ground while he preached to him about, what's wrong with you and all this. Boone kind of played possum before jumping to his feet with a rock and pounding the guy's face in until he was dead. So, as we said, no honor.
That sounds like Boone.
Yeah, it's the most Boone move ever. He's just like such a rat, Does what he did whatever he had to do to survive at any moment.
Yep. Ruthless, bro.
Yeah.
Ruthless. A man that was going to not only feeding you and supplying you with water and security and company, but also would have given you gold, I'm sure.
Yeah.
I'm sure he would have given you gold when they found it. I mean,
but why do that when you can just have it all, With this one killing.
But you don't have the experience from him though.
True. Well, he didn't look at it that way. He was like, why have the experience when you can just kill other people that have the experience and have all the spoils from having the experience? Like, why?
Yeah, he was super
He's
lazy.
the type of guy that
He
would
was
like
super lazy.
camp at the edge of like he would like hide out and watch someone mine every day, right? And then as soon as the guy found a big nugget of gold, he would just go kill the guy and take the nugget of gold. Like, why do all the work and have all the experience when you could just take what the guy that did all the work? You know, that's all he ever did
Yeah,
was just.
I'm underestimating the laziness of Boone.
That's what it is.
sure.
It comes down to the laziness.
It really is.
So with this one killing, Boone had taken a man's entire life, his food, shelter, money, even his donkey, and every other possession worth carrying on his journey to California. On the way. So yeah, he'd basically gone from an asylum where he had nothing. He was probably even in like scrubs or some kind of, whatever attire they put him in, to having this guy's clothes. He just basically stole the man's life. The guy had worked his ass off probably his whole life to have the things that he had, and then Boone just came along and just killed him and just took it all.
Stole his life, his identity.
Yeah, and that's the way it was in the Wild West during these times. Like those type of people that they came looking for prosperity, that tried to do the right thing. A lot of times they ended up dead in the plains somewhere. Their body would just be found as a skeleton later on, and all their shit was gone because there was a lot of guys like Boone out there that were just making living off of stealing those people's shit and killing them.
Yep.
Like we talked about with the Bloody Benders, they were kind of doing it the same way, except they had a stationary spot where people would roll through.
Yeah,
and
they let them come to them.
Yeah, they were doing it even easier.
Yeah, they were. They had a roof over their head and everything they needed, and
Yep.
yeah, and a curtain to hide behind. Apparently, that's all they needed.
Yep. So Boone was on the trail again, first traveling through Kansas, where he murdered several men in various altercations, eventually committing premeditated murder. He preferred to kill random travelers from afar so he could pick through their belongings at his own pace. He eventually learned that trick is, rather than going up, risking your life, killing them in a confrontation, why not just kill them from a distance? And then you can take your time.
You already made up your mind. You're going to kill him.
Oh, yeah. You got no qualms about that.
Yeah. Right.
Weeks turned into months, and eventually Boone got hungry enough to kill and eat his donkey. Well, what is now his donkey, but formerly the prospector's donkey.
The prospectors. Right.
So he kills and eats the donkey, and now on foot, things were getting even harder. So he's really, like we said, there's a lot of his life that was like the Revenant, where he's just straight up surviving. Like he's got no food, no water, and he's got to kill someone just to eat because hunting was hard, So one day he spotted a lone hunter and killed him with a rifle shot from a distance. He was beyond disappointed to find that the man had been having no luck either with hunting and had nothing for Boone to eat. As Boone's stomach pains and hallucinations worsened, the hunter himself began looking more enticing by the minute, and by night's end, Boone had become a cannibal. He'd consumed his first human meal, but far from his last. So he crossed this line. And the book made it sound like he was actually, this is one of the only things in his life he was remorseful, was this first experience with eating a human being. That was just a line that even he thought he would never cross. But, once you do it once, it's that much easier to do it again. And so, that next day he had that kind of sick feeling and like, man, I don't want to do that again. And then it was just the next time it was just like, oh, let's do that. And then just became commonplace for him to do this.
Right. Just became another tool in his belt, man, of survival.
Yeah. Well, it showed him that that how useful it could be, because he went from being on death's door to being really capable and strong the next day after basically gorging on human meat all night long. He got his strength back, and it, kept him trucking on his way to California. So crazy.
Yeah, it is.
And almost immediately after crossing into the California border, finally, he ran into some cousins, believe it or not. The Johnson brothers heard that a guy named Helm was in town and discovered that he was their cousin. And they thought they were going to impress him. Like, this is going to be some soft boy from back east. And we're going to impress him with some stories of our criminal exploits and whatnot. And he just kind of sat there quietly, unimpressed, until they said, well, what's so impressive?
Yeah.
What have you done that's so amazing? And he his quotes were the best. He said, many's the poor devil I've killed at one time or another, and the time has been that I've been obliged to feed on some of them. And at that point, they kindly shut the fuck up about how badass they were.
Oh my God! But to be fair, they got to be pretty badass to make it to California. I mean, that was a tough trip. That was a tough trip.
No doubt.
But yeah, they weren't cannibals apparently.
Yeah. Yeah, and so for some time, he spent some time working with his cousins, working claims, and getting into frequent fights at bars as he did, before having to leave town after one of those bar fights turned into him killing a man in front of a bunch of witnesses. So he went to his cousins, who were quite relieved to be no longer in his presence. You know, I'm sure they thought, oh, this cousin, you know, there's a cousin in town, and this is going to be awesome. He's going to think we're so cool, and blah blah blah. And then it's fucking Boone Helm. And they're immediately afraid of this guy, but they feel like they have to keep working with him. And so when he comes to them and says he has to flee town and thanks for all the hospitalities and stuff, they're like, thank God, as they see him ride away over the sunset.
Seriously. Dude could have taken their life at any time. And you know they had to have known this too. They were probably just being super friendly. They're like, just don't agitate him. He'll be gone. All
right. Yeah, I mean, that's the one thing you could say about Boone, is that if he was around, it was terrible, and you're just kind of holding your breath when he's around, but it's just a matter of time before he does something and he's got to run again, because you just hope you're not the reason he's running.
Good point, yeah.
Because he killed you. So after fleeing California, he headed to Oregon, where he teamed up with 6 other bandits and taught them a thing or two about killing witnesses. They taught him about armed robbery. He taught them about killing the witnesses after said armed robbery. This was, by all accounts, Boone's favorite time. Law enforcement knew better than to try and take him down and his band of misfits, and there were endless gold-rich travelers that had made their way to Oregon for them to rip off. So yeah, there was all these people that had gone and found gold, struck it rich, and they were hanging out or traveling through Oregon, and they would just basically go take all their hard work away from them and their lives a lot of times.
Their lives first.
Boone and his gang then heard about the Comstock lode in what was then Utah, but is now actually Nevada, was where this Comstock lode was. But at the time it was in Utah, which was just littered with Mormon forts and stuff. So they went up to Utah and spent some time wreaking havoc there before being chased off. And this is where it gets real Revenant-like, real crazy. He barely makes it through this series of events. So after him and his band of misfits are pushed out of Utah, and they're on their way back to Oregon, they get attacked by a group of Native Americans, the Digger tribe, which actually they dug holes into the sides of hills and mountains and lived in them. Oh, nice. Like made their own caves and whatnot. Yeah, so I guess they were riding along on a trail on their way back to Oregon when this whole tribe came up behind them and started shooting arrows at them and everything, and there was a crazy chase that ensued, and the only reason Boone and his boys were even able to survive the initial chase and the attack by the Native Americans was that the kind of a lucky shot struck the chief's horse's leg and took the horse out, and the rest of the tribe stopped to check on their leader to make sure he was okay. So that kind of like halted their pursuit, which was surely going to end in Boone and his compatriots or his compadres there being killed.
So many of these outlaws have these lucky moments. You know, like when you're watching old Western movies, you're like, there's multiple times usually in these spaghetti westerns and shit where just something crazy lucky happens, and you're like, man, this dude would have been dead right here in a normal circumstance, right? But maybe not, because every time we study these Wild West guys, there's always these crazy lucky things that happen when you're like, okay, they're definitely gonna die here. I mean, this is not a story, like this is not a movie. This is real life, and shit like this happens. So I don't know. It's like, well, maybe there was a little bit of luck involved in some of this, or maybe they just fired enough bullets that something was going to land. You know?
Yep. No doubt. I don't think guns were all that accurate back then.
Oh no,
they didn't have rifling and things like that, so they were just kind of shooting and praying. Yeah. And they got lucky. However, this was far from the end for their treacherous journey back to Oregon, because they basically they barely survived getting out of that, and they camped out. And they had 2 lookouts while they were sleeping, and overnight, one of them's throat was slit by one of the Digger tribe's members who'd snuck up. Of course, they're super good at tracking and whatnot. They'd found their encampment, slit the throat of one of their watchmen, and killed a horse as well. So they knew they were still being hunted, and short on provisions, Boone and his remaining party killed their horses, ate the meat, made snowshoes out of their hides, and the journey was completely just brutal and arduous, whittling down the party to 2 men. They ended up splitting up. Boone went one way, and one guy decided to follow Boone. Not a great idea.
No.
While the others went a different direction. The man that went with Boone was a guy named Burton. And upon their arrival at Fort Hall, Idaho, which is where they were headed, where Boone was headed to at least, they were in terrible shape. They were starving. And Boone and Burton realized that the place had been boarded up and abandoned prior to the blizzard that they were dealing with. Only shelter and firewood remained, so no food. Still, all they could do was basically wait and try and wait out winter, and they were for surely going to starve to death.
Right.
But of course, Boone's not going to,
Right,
because he's
of
got
course.
meat sitting right next to him.
That's right. He brought some with him, and it carries itself. How convenient.
Yeah. Yes, barely. Burton had basically staggered into this camp, and could go no further. And so Boone, while he was sleeping, woke him up by cutting off one of Burton's legs. While he was
Jesus.
awake, he basically held him down and cut his leg off. He then used a tourniquet to make sure that this is where it gets real brutal.
Yes.
Yeah,
This is
he actually saved
animalistic.
Burton's life after cutting off his leg. Instead of letting him bleed to death, he actually made a tourniquet so that he could keep fresh meat when he needed it.
Exactly.
You know, if he keeps Burton alive, the meat can't rot. You know,
But couldn't he have just
And
killed him and
so-
threw him out in the blizzard in the snow and it would have preserved? Just throw him in like a snowpack, and just leave him out.
I think that the book kind of briefly touched on that and said that he was worried about wild animals getting to it.
Good point. Good point. Yeah, those little snow foxes, man. They'll dive down in there.
That and then your meat can get freezer burn. You know.
Yeah, that's true. Nobody likes that. Better to keep it fresh.
Yeah.
Good thinking, Boone.
Yeah. So he then feasted on Burton's leg in front of him and actually fed Burton some of his own leg meat.
Oh, God.
Allegedly. Oh. Burton then spent days in agony resting in the camp with one leg. When Boone would go out, he started to learn Boone's pattern that Boone would go out every day to collect firewood for a little bit. And he saw this as his opportunity to try and get the jump on Boone because he knew it was inevitable that Boone was going to kill him.
Yeah.
And so he saw that Boone would leave this pistol sitting, like 20 feet away when he would go on this hunt for firewood. And he knew it was going to be just absolutely agonizing to try and go those 20 feet, crawl with a stump leg that was just cut off.
Right. That's what I would be thinking. I'm
but
like, where are you going to go? Let's say you kill Boone. How are you going to progress now?
Oh, yeah, no.
You know what I mean?
No, I don't know if he even thought ahead of that. It was just
I
like,
don't think he did either.
I've got to kill Boone regardless. Like, I think he probably knew he was going to die.
But killing Boone is certainly killing yourself at this point. I
Yeah,
feel like
I
where you're
suppose.
trapped, you have no way out. I mean, I know Boone is planning on killing you, but maybe Boone carries you a little ways and then finds an animal or finds someone else along the trail.
Well, I mean, this was the way that the book portrayed it, and this could have been just adding more kind of like story to it, kind of making it more interesting.
Yeah. I know,
was
I'm
the-
just
the Boone-
speculating.
or-
You know how I'd be doing.
Yeah, the book, The Kentucky Cannibal by Ryan Green, he described a situation in which Burton had, once Boone went out to collect firewood one evening, Burton crawled to the gun in agonizing pain, crawled over to this pistol, found that there was only one bullet in it, and rather than wait for Boone to come back and try and get one lucky shot to kill him, which was going to be difficult, because once Boone got back, he was going to see the blood marks and the drag marks of him dragging himself over to this gun and know that he had the gun.
Right.
And at that point, I mean, he's not going to be able to kill him, as Boone's just going to kill him first.
Absolutely.
So supposedly Burton then just decided to use the one bullet on himself, and Boone from a distance heard a gunshot go off and returned to find Burton dead, having shot himself. So, but I mean, you could just look at it as though Burton found this chance to kill himself when Boone was gone.
Yeah.
And
Because,
that's probably the more likely scenario. He's probably just in agonizing pain all day long.
right. So,
And just want it to be over.
right. So I guess you could argue that he did think it through. He did think getting past, you know what I mean? Like if he killed Boone, he did realize that it was only a short amount of time and then he would probably die of starvation or
sure.
freezing to death, which would be terrible.
It would have been great if he would have eaten Boone, though, right? Healed it, like waited it out, eaten Boone, let his leg heal enough to where he could kind of make some makeshift crutches out of sticks or something, and then if he would have
one of
survived,
Boone's
that would have
legs,
been awesome.
You know?
Dude, just take one of Boone's legs.
One of Boone's legs, man. Prop that thing up under there. Got you a little stilt. You're good to go, man.
Dude, that would have been some next level shit.
Oh my God, we'd be doing a case on Burton instead of Boone. Jesus Christ, the
Right.
guy used another guy's leg as a first prosthetic.
Right. That would have been awesome.
Oh my God.
Hey, creepers. Did you know every 26 seconds there's a break-in this country? But with Simply Safe Home Security, you can protect your whole home around the clock. It's serious, lasting protection, and all it takes is a simple 30-minute setup. You'll even get a free security camera when you protect your home today. More on that in a second. I set up my SimpliSafe system in about 30 minutes. I now have sensors on all my doors and windows, and I even have a motion sensor in my basement. I can sleep like a baby now, knowing that if anyone tries to get in my home, that my alarm will be set off. SimpliSafe is an award-winning arsenal of sensors and security cameras that blankets every inch of your home. You'll know your home and family are always safe. You set SimpliSafe up yourself in a few minutes without any tools or wiring. No technician or salesperson has to step foot in your home. Then SimpliSafe will monitor your home around the clock with security professionals who are there in case of an emergency to immediately send help to your home. Plus, there's no contract, no hidden fees, and no installation costs. It's why a U.S. News and World Report named SimpliSafe Best Overall Home Security of 2020. And here's the best part. Right now, visit simplisafe.com/creeper and get a free security camera plus a 60-day risk-free trial with any new system order. There's nothing to lose. Go today to simplisafe.com/creeper. That's simplisafe.com/creeper.
This week's episode is also brought to you by BetterHelp. What interferes with your happiness? Is something preventing you from achieving your goals? Personally, I have battles with depression that leave me uninspired or unmotivated to create, which is the one thing I feel like I'm on this earth to do. But luckily, we're not alone. BetterHelp will assess your needs and match you with your own licensed professional therapist. You can connect in a safe and private online environment, and you can start right here in the next 24 hours. It's not self-help, it's professional counseling. You can send a message to your counselor anytime, and you'll get timely and thoughtful responses. Plus, if you desire, you can schedule weekly video or phone sessions, all without ever having to sit in an uncomfortable waiting room. BetterHelp is committed to facilitating great therapeutic matches, so they make it easy and free to change the counselors if you need to or want to. It's more affordable than traditional offline counseling, but financial aid is available for those who need it. BetterHelp is available all over the world. There's a broad range of expertise available which you may not be able to find in your area. BetterHelp only uses licensed professional counselors who specialize in depression, stress, anxiety, relationships, sleeping, trauma, anger, family conflicts, LGBT matters, grief, self-esteem, and of course, anything you share is always confidential. What are you waiting for? BetterHelp is convenient, professional, affordable. Just check out the testimonials posted on their site every day on BetterHelp.com. BetterHelp is not a crisis line, and so many people have been using BetterHelp that they are recruiting additional counselors in all 50 states. I want you to start living a happier life today. As a True Crime Guys listener, you'll get 10% off your first month by visiting our sponsor at betterhelp.com/creeper. Join over 1 million people who have taken charge of their mental health. Again, that's BetterHelp, HELP.com/creeper.
As it was, Burton was dead, and now his meat was going to be rotting by the minute. So Boone basically had to get moving. He wrapped up Burton's other leg, put it in a sack, and hung it over his leg, or swung it over his back as he continued his journey. So he's got some meat for the go.
Yeah,
on the
go.
Boone then made his way through treacherous terrain yet again, and eventually found a Shoshone Native American camp. And in a very ballsy move, he kind of just waltzed into the camp and sat down next to them at the campfire. And amazingly, when he wandered into their camp, they didn't slaughter him on the spot. Rather, they fed and provided him with a warm bed and shelter. And it's just amazing his luck, time and time again, how many people were willing to help him out.
I'm surprised
on this.
I'm surprised one of them wasn't like, "Hey, what's that on your shoulder right there?" Like,
right? Why are you carrying a leg on your back?
What you got there, partner? How did you? How you come across that there?
Right.
Dude.
Maybe that's what made him like I don't know if I want to mess with this guy.
Shit. Or maybe he ate it before you even got there.
Probably. That's probably more likely. Yeah. So it's just amazing to me, though, how many people showed him kindness in the Wild West. You know, like a time where anyone you come across could kill you and take all your shit, just like Boone did to so many people. Like, how did he not run into someone like him along the way?
Well,
or maybe he did, and he just was able to get the drop on them first.
Well, that, and then also, like we talked about earlier, the sociopathic tendencies. He could be a charmer, and he was also young.
Yes,
and he wasn't big. He wasn't a big man. I mean, look at the pictures. I mean, I know people. Yeah, people have gotten bigger overall, like as time has progressed. I think a big man in 1880 is a small or maybe at best an average size man here. Yeah, exactly. So maybe they just weren't threatened by him. He looked young. He was young. He died at 36. Jesus.
Yeah.
He was young. So he maybe looked like a lost puppy to some people. You know what I'm saying? When he pulled in this camp, and the camp is probably like, man, what's he going to do? Take us all out? Shit.
Yeah, right.
It's just one kid.
Yeah, and this was a camp that did trade with random people who came through, and that's how Boone ends up getting his next travel companion.
Yeah.
Because when a man named John Powell, traveling through the area, stopped to meet with the Shoshone to make some trades, they made a deal to have Boone accompany him on his journey. This agreement netted John Powell an extra 2 furs. So basically, they pawned him off on John Powell for a couple extra furs. Like, take this guy off our hands, please. We're tired of him.
He's carrying a leg, and we just got a bad feeling about him.
Yeah, this guy's creeping us out a little bit. Take some furs and take him away. I don't care what you do with them. Yeah. Powell also surely thought that Boone would also compensate him once they reached their destination. Of course, he didn't know Boone's nature in that way. He was probably misled by Boone's sociopathic behavior, acting like a nice average guy.
Right.
Despite having over $1,400 in coins on his person, however, Boone neither paid nor thanked Powell for feeding, clothing, and transporting him to Salt Lake City.
Dude, $1,400.
So he takes him on this trip.
That's like
$1,400.
You know what that is? That's like I seen a equivalence of now, like you know what I'm saying, like the monetary equivalence of like today. It's like $35,000 is what he had on him. $35,000 he's walking around with, and he didn't give this guy a coin.
And that's what I'm saying is that he would just go and take people's lives. These people, they had struck it rich. Sometimes he would come across these people who had like fulfilled their dreams. They'd gone on the gold rush and they'd scored and they'd gotten, big nuggets of gold and all this stuff, and their future was set. And then he would just come along and take it and kill them.
Yep.
And that was that.
That's that.
And then he had it.
That's right.
And then he wouldn't give a damn coin of it to anyone else.
Dude, he wouldn't even pay his bar tab. Fucking cheapskate.
No.
What else are you doing with the money? Go buy. I don't know, man. I don't understand why he didn't just travel from like town to town and just rent rooms. He had plenty of money, and he had enough money to even pay off people. And then when he hits the road again, he's just going to kill other people and take their money. So it's, I don't know. I don't know why he lived such a hard life.
Like at what point was he going to use the money, right? Because it's like, I feel like even if he was going to go buy a house, he'd just show up to someone's house and just shoot them and just live in their house. Like, why would I pay for it?
Right. What are you doing with the money? The money is worthless to you. Literally doesn't do anything with it.
Right.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah. He's not buying meals. He just eats people. What's the difference? He doesn't
He's
need
not
the
buying
money.
drinks. He just fucking says fuck you and walks out. Like
Right.
he's not doing anything.
Yep. So once in Salt Lake City, it of course didn't take him long to find trouble. Almost immediately, he was hired by some Mormons to kill a couple of rowdy miners that had been causing trouble. Pretty interesting part of the past of the Wild West and everything.
The vicious
was that
Mormons back in the day. Ooh.
The vicious Mormons and why they were, I guess they were angry because they had gone in and settled and all this stuff. And then I guess the government told them they had to give up a bunch of their land and stuff to kind of spread the wealth, because they didn't want these this one family of Mormons or 2 or 3 families of Mormons to own the entire state and all that territory and become super powerful, have all the money and all that. They basically didn't want like a dictatorship of Mormons in Utah at the time. So they basically said that they had to give up a bunch of these plots of land, and they were giving them to miners that were just coming through, giving these plots of land.
Right.
And the Mormons were obviously pissed off about it, and they became vicious, and so that's why they decided to hire this guy who comes into town who's got this awful reputation, is willing to kill anybody with Boone Helm, and they see an opportunity to pay him to kill a couple of miners they didn't like. And of course, Boone's like, I'll kill whoever you want me to.
Yeah, he's like,
whatever. I enjoy killing.
Right.
Now, how Boone did it, they probably didn't expect it to be so brash and brazen right in the middle of the street in front of everyone. He just walks up and shoots them right there in the street, center of town.
Oh my God! Yeah. Hey,
one
are you
the one guy?
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Yeah, there was 2 of them. The one, I think the book said he shot while the guy was taking a piss. He just walked up behind him and shot him in the back.
Dude, that's
the other
fucked
guy.
up.
He spotted. The other guy was like you could hear the.
Oh
he's
yeah.
Like, Boone's walking down the street and the guy spots him and he's like, oh shit, and turns around, starts running, and Boone just unloads on him in his back in front of everybody.
Damn.
It's just like, Damn.
See, because Boone don't give a shit. He's not planning on staying in that town. He's leaving anyways.
He never stays anywhere.
He's passing through.
Yep.
But the Mormons shafted him though. That's what he gets.
Yeah. Of course, they're like, well, we told you to kill him, but we wanted you to do a little sneakier, and we can't be paying you to just kill people in the streets.
Yeah. Well, they didn't have
And
no
guess what? We got these high walls on our fort here, and we're just going to yell down, fuck you, we're not paying you.
Yeah, there you go.
Maybe not fuck you, like darn you.
Yeah.
Because they're Mormons.
I see what you did there. Nice.
Yeah. Boone then connected with Danite vigilantes and helped them fight in the Ute Wars. This guy lived one hell of a life, man. Now he's fighting Native Americans in the war against the Utes.
Yeah.
He was allegedly even too depraved for them. So he actually freaked out these vigilantes that were known for being brutal and killing Native Americans for a living. He actually creeped them out because, I mean, they were about killing and raping and doing whatever to Native Americans. They didn't give a shit. Mm-hmm. However, Boone would take it even a step further. He was actually crazy, but he was mutilating Native American women in front of these vigilantes, and they were like, all right, dude, this is a bit much even for us.
Whoa, Jesus.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know, dude. Because, well, most of the vigilantes, they felt like they had a purpose. They had something that they were trying to push, you know what I mean? But Boone didn't. Boone was just like, he was just evil. I mean, that's all it is. He was just a sadistic person.
Yep.
So when he had that opportunity, he's like, oh, 2 birds, 1 stone. I can join your cause and do what I want to do anyways.
Yeah. Although this was like too much work for him, you know?
Oh, yeah, of course. Of course.
Although it satisfied his taste for killing, the work, it actually got up with a purpose in the morning, like, all right, let's go do this. We got a war to fight. And he was like, if I feel like killing, I'll do it.
Yeah.
But I also kind of want to chill out today. I don't know if really today's like...
I don't really feel like it today.
Like I worked yesterday all day, you know?
Right.
Like, and it's like a lot.
I murdered a tribe yesterday. Dude, a tribe a day? Come on, man. Nobody can do that.
I know, right?
Sheesh.
That's too much, man.
Right. It's Saturday.
So he didn't last long. They were kind of tired of him. He got tired of all the the discipline it took to go out and actually do these plans and all this work. He just didn't like it. So he split ways with the Danite vigilantes and headed back to Oregon, where he had spent some of the best days of his life with that group of 6 outlaws.
Oh yeah,
yeah. And actually, everywhere he went, he seemed like someone would follow him, though, because one of the Danite vigilantes actually went with him on his way to Oregon. And you know, the more I think about it, the more I'm starting to think that he coaxed someone away every time.
He had to
just because it's a free meal. You know what I mean? Like that's just kind of his insurance policy. It's like if I take a guy with me, worst comes to worst, if I can't find anything to eat or whatever, shit gets bad, I can just eat the guy I'm with.
Yeah.
I really think that was calculated on his part because he was always calculated, as we talked about.
Doubt. And also, he would win over these people. Like it's almost like he would win their loyalty, but return none. So it's a win-win for him. You know, it's like if he encounters someone, now you have a man fighting for your side, and then, like you said, you got food.
It really is brilliant if you have no humanity at all. It's kind of brilliant.
Yes. Yeah, it is. It's understood, and also, even the book described there were times where he was lonely. There were times where he was,
and he was fucking lazy too. There was people that would take him in. There was the one farmer that took him into his farm when he found him hiding or whatever, which we'll talk about later.
Oh,
and he let the guy just do everything. The guy cooked him meals, like he was just like lounging on the guy's couch. Essentially, he was like just lounging, and the guy would go out and farm all day, come home, come into the house at night, cook him a meal. They'd hang out and drink together, and then fucking Boone would just crash on his couch again that night, and they would start all over again.
Yeah.
And he just had just used people up as long as he could and let them do all the work, and then he'd eat them.
Well, if you don't value human life at all, then you don't value people's time. You don't value people's, their resources.
Yep.
You don't give a shit.
Yep. Yeah. So he takes off from the Danite soldiers, and one of the guys follow him, as we mentioned. And at this point, French miners with a carriage of approximately $30,000 in gold became Boone's next victims. Boone and his partner stormed their camp and killed 3 men before burying their gold near the road in Antler Creek. Now this is up in they've made their way up into BC, British Columbia. Right. They've made their way all up above Oregon, and this is where they come across I don't know if they knew these guys had all this gold or if they just got lucky, but they freaking scored enough to retire for a couple lifetimes. You know, like you mentioned, $30,000 back then. Imagine how much money that was in Wild West times.
I mean, if he was carrying 1,400 right? And that is the equivalent
Right.
of 35 grand now. I mean, he could probably live the rest of his life on 30 grand in gold.
Right. Oh, for sure.
The rest of his life, dude.
Especially because he ain't planning on giving any to that partner of his.
Right, and he
That's
he
for
doesn't
damn
buy
sure.
anything. I don't even know why he needs money anyways. He could live the rest of his life without money, apparently.
Yeah. So the party of 3 that they had come across and taken that 30 grand in gold from and buried, that party of 3 had been 5 people the night before. However, 2 men, their names were Irish and Collinson, had split off from the camp to go camp alone, fearing that something like this might happen. They felt really vulnerable. They're like, dude, we're sitting out here in the middle of nowhere. We've got freaking 30 grand worth of gold on us. We really feel like targets. So they went off and kind of slept into safer spots. Good call, as the 3 men that they left were then butchered right afterwards by Boone and his partner.
Right.
We have a quote from Collinson, I think. He said, "We stayed at the Forks next day and saw that the murdered men were brought in. They had made a brave fight. Every man's pistol, good 6-shooters, was empty, and each man had a bullet through his head. Boone Helm and his chum killed these 3 men, took and hid the dust, and if no stranger had found it, it is there yet. For Boone left the country, I have proof of that." So he knows what then happens, which is Boone is then forced to take off again, following all the heat from his events and all his crimes. So he buries the money, and he knows. So this guy's basically saying there's this buried treasure somewhere out here. And it's basically gold dust, 30 grand worth of gold dust.
Jesus.
And so he continues with his quote. He says, "After leaving the Forks, I journeyed on down, stopping at Beaver Lake, Deep Creek, and Williams Lake. I met Boone Helm and his chum at the Little Bloody Run, a few miles above Cook and Kimball's Ferry, now Spence's Bridge. The first thing I heard was, 'Throw up your hands.' And looking up, I saw the muzzle of a double-barreled shotgun about 4 feet from my head. It took his partner about 5 minutes to cut my pack straps. After taking my 6 shooters and purse, the latter contained $3 Mexican and 3 British shillings. One of my old shirts contained a good wad, but a small bag of containing bullets attracted their attention and saved my dust, which, with being tied around my old shirt pocket, was not seen. They emptied my pistol, gave it back to me, and said, 'Get,' and not to look back, as my road was downhill. I lost no time." So the party he was with, aside from one other guy who he had camped out with, were murdered. He goes to town. He sees their murdered bodies come into town. They flee, him and his buddy, like, "Shit, man, look at what's going on. We got to get the hell out of this place."
Yeah.
And on the trail leaving town, they run into Boone and his partner, who were then hiding out, who then ripped them off. And it's amazing that Boone and the guy didn't kill this Collinson guy.
It really is.
At that point, after robbing him.
It is also amazing that they didn't search him thoroughly and take that last little bit of gold dust in his pocket.
Yeah. Well, it wasn't Boone that had searched him. It was Boone's partner, and that guy kind of slipped up, and that he got distracted by the ammunition or whatever and missed the gold dust that was kind of like hidden in the guy's shirt.
But to them, though, I think the ammunition was probably more valuable.
Right.
Honestly, for
yeah,
their
they're
way
like,
of
we
life.
got plenty of gold dust.
Yeah, they got plenty of money, period.
These bullets will get us plenty more gold.
Yeah.
We don't need to worry about it.
Yeah, exactly. Let him have that pocket of gold dust.
Yeah. Yeah. So the first night while he was in Victoria, that Boone headed to Victoria, British Columbia after this. The first night he was there, he was arrested after losing at poker and refusing to pay his bar tab.
See, there you go. Plenty of money to pay the bar tab. It was probably like a nickel or some shit, and he wouldn't pay it. He's walking around with $30,000+ in gold, and he won't pay a fucking bar tab.
Yeah.
Oh my God. It just goes to show you, man. This dude didn't give a fuck.
Yep. So while in Victoria, he'd spent 3 days in jail while the Canadian police tried to reach those who were looking for him in America to face charges for all the different crimes. And he was wanted as a murder suspect in several locations, including back in Missouri, where he was known to have killed his cousin. So the Canadian, the police up there had caught wind of who he was. You know, that this was Boone Helm, the famous outlaw in the Wild West in America, and they were this sheriff up there in Canada was hell bent on getting him brought up on these charges down there, and he just needed more time. But 3 days was all they could hold him on for the crimes that he committed there.
Right.
And he was sending all these letters down to different spots in the States to try and get him extradited, but he wasn't getting responses in time. And actually Boone's partner, who they were trying to extract information from up in Canada, was beaten so badly that he died in police custody. I mean, not that he was in the best shape to begin with, being on the road and trails and all this stuff all this time with Boone, but he actually died in custody, so they didn't have him.
They probably
I don't
did.
know. They probably did. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
He was just a little
Boone was
healthier.
tougher than a bag of nails.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true.
And also Boone had hired a great lawyer while in Victoria and was given only $50 bail and released of all charges, except he didn't have the $50. So I don't know what he had hidden all that money, right?
Right. He didn't have it on him. He knew where it was.
He didn't have all that money. He was
Yeah.
planning on going back and getting that. He knew that the heat would be on once the 3 bodies of those men were found, and so he had to flee the area for a little while, and then he was planning on going back and digging up the 30 grand in gold that he had buried.
Mm-hmm.
And probably he was going to kill his partner first and go back alone and get all that gold.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, he didn't have the $50 to pay for his bail in Victoria, which forced him to then do chain gang work for a month in Victoria to pay back his debts. He had to get up at the ass crack of dawn every morning and go out and beat rocks all day, and he hated it.
No kidding.
This is like his first real. He always had a hunch that he would hate, being an average stiff working man.
Yeah.
Like his dad was,
Right.
and it was the longest 4 weeks of his life. He got a taste of real honest work, and it only bolstered the idea of the way of living that he had been all about all along.
Yep.
So he left and didn't turn back. And of course, in typical Boone Helm fashion, he took someone with him when he left this place as well. A guy named Dirty Harris coincidentally got released from his much longer sentence on the same day Boone got released. He'd be yet another brief partner in crime of Boone's. So he takes this guy with him from Victoria on the chain gang, and it's his newest partner in crime there. He took Dirty Harris back to Antler Creek to find the riches that he'd buried, but he was spotted in town by Collinson, the guy that he let live. That's what I'm saying. It's amazing. He let him live, and of course it comes back to bite him, who happened to be sitting in front of a constable's office at the time. So he comes into town, and this guy, he can't do nothing about it. It's not like he can kill Collinson on the spot because it was just too much heat right there. He would have been gunned down by all of Victoria's law.
Right.
Or Antler Creek, I guess.
They should've took care of him.
Boone and Dirty Harris then had to flee, and yet again, Boone was living on the run and in the woods. Collinson went to a nearby British base and enlisted the help of their cavalry union. So he'd already gotten a taste of what it was like to come across Boone out in the wilderness. He didn't want to have another experience where it's like, before he knows it, Boone's behind him with a gun to his head.
Right, exactly.
He didn't try to pursue Boone and his partner. He instead went to a British base and enlisted the help of their cavalry unit to find this outlaw. It took them several weeks to find Boone, and they'd actually quit the search and written him off as being, a victim of the wilderness and being dead before I think it was like a fisherman had spotted 2 men trouncing through a river. And that's where they were avoiding the detection of the search dogs. The scent. The dogs can't pick up the scent if you're traveling through the river.
That's right.
So they were smart enough to do that. They then put their search back on, and it didn't take too long after that to find Boone, who was half starved and looking rough yet again. A quote from the people that found him. They said, "When overtaken, he was so exhausted by fatigue and hunger that it would have been impossible for him to have continued many hours longer. Upon being asked what had become of his companion, he replied with the utmost sang-froid, 'Why, do you suppose that I'm a fool enough to starve to death when I can help it? I ate him up, of course.'"
Duh. But see, even in his mind, it's so justified, right? He's been living this lifestyle for so long that is just a normal statement to
it's
him.
just
It's like,
commonplace.
I had food with me, so I ate it,
Right.
so I didn't die.
Much like if you go on a hike, you might bring a bag of beef jerky.
Right.
That's
like
his
getting to the top
equivalent,
of the
if he
mountain.
brings a living human being.
Yeah, it's like getting to the top of the mountain and be like, dude, where's your beef jerky? It's like, bro, I ate it. I would have died on my way up here. Are you kidding me? Like, it's that commonplace for him.
Yeah, he doesn't bring meat on his travels. He brings a human being and a bag of salt to salt them up when it's time.
Maybe a little lemon.
That's it.
A little lemon squeeze on there, a little zest.
A little acidity.
Yeah, there you go.
So, so he ate up his partner, and they found him on death's door, and yet again, he was saved by the law, or, it was time and time again. It was just perfect timing. Like, he's about to starve or dehydrate to death out in the woods, and he's either captured and saved by law enforcement or by some traveling person who helps him out. He was then transported from Victoria to Port Townsend, where he'd spend very little time before he dug out of Townsend jail and once more made his way to the hills. So he was facing basically the noose. He was going to get hung for his crimes this time.
Oh, yeah.
And he knows it.
No doubt.
So instead, he breaks out of jail, as most of the criminals we study who have made it through the annals of history.
Well, you have no choice here.
He's just yet another, an early day Ted Bundy. He's always just good at breaking out of situations.
Yep.
And the way he'd done it this time was he'd had a mining background. He'd done some digging in his past. So he had stolen a trowel from the jail's garden and dug under the wall of his cell block, but also the outer wall of the jail. It took them 4 days to realize he was gone because he had filled his bed with rags to make it look as though he was sleeping.
Oh, that
so it was very
that old gag.
Shawshank Redemption-esque.
Yeah. Hung up a poster over the hole.
Yeah.
Nice. The poster of Billy the Kid or some shit.
How you gonna have a jail with fucking dirt floors, dude? In a time where mining rules the land, like everyone digs for a living. That's all everyone does is dig, and yet you put dirt floors in their cell.
Well, because they were banking on the laziness, man. They were banking on the laziness, but they don't. But when a man is faced with his life, you know what I mean? It's life or death.
He's a desperate
man.
man.
He's not lazy anymore. He's willing to put in the work now.
Part of me wondered what kept Boone going. Like, what was it that motivated him to like living? Was it? Did he like? I don't know that he lived to kill. I think he did it just because like he didn't care.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it didn't bother him at all, and if he could get something out of it, he would do it.
Right.
I don't think he like lived to kill. I don't think he was like that's all he was about. And also, it's just like I don't know what was it. What was it that he loved in life? I don't know.
You know what, Lauren? I don't think he had the time to think about that. I really don't think. You know, like just imagine how
just
distracting.
New and exciting shit. I think that's all it was.
Yeah.
Like, right? What's in the next town that I can go fuck up?
It's just adrenaline.
You know?
It's just constant adrenaline.
That's what it was, right? He was an old school adrenaline junkie. Like there was no snowboarding and like.
No, there was nothing like.
He's not going to hit a freestyle ramp on a dirt bike.
No,
but, you know he can go kill a man and steal his shit.
No skydiving.
And, go use his money at a whorehouse or whatever.
Yeah, no bungee jumping, nothing like that. So you just do crazy shit, man. The adrenaline becomes so distracting and so enticing and so addictive. I think that's the only thing that pushes these guys. That's the only thing that makes sense. Because obviously he didn't care about the money. He wasn't trying to build some future. He wasn't trying to take care of people. Like I feel like Billy the Kid was always trying to build this empire. You know what I mean? Like he was trying to stash things for, you know, the like the Mexican girl that he was in love with. Like he took care of their family.
He'd fallen in love.
Yeah, he kind of had this whole thing that he was trying to build. And I think on most outlaws, they feel like one day I won't have to do this. Right, one day I'll be able to live free. I'll have all the money I can wish for, which Boone had at this time. And
I think the other guys too had a sense that they were making a name for them, so that they were going to be remembered. Yeah, that there would be books written about them, that they were living like this legendary life. I think that's part of what kind of motivated Billy the Kid and Bill Hickok, guys like that, like Jesse James. Is like they kind of knew they had a sense that they were at the forefront of something. You know, they were part of the start of a new country, and they were at the forefront of that, and they were the legends of it. And I think they got a sense of that. Whereas this guy just truly didn't give a shit about his reputation. No, like we said, it had to have been something chemical in his brain that he was addicted to, and the only thing I can think is adrenaline. That's the only thing I can think of. The only reason why, like you said, why would you keep living? I mean, you don't care about anything. Your life has no direction, no purpose, no ending. You have no promised land that you're trying to get to. You're just causing havoc over and over again. I don't know. Yeah. Yeah. So Boone escaped jail up in Canada by digging out and headed back south to California. And by the time he had gotten there, he had somehow managed to have a new horse, a new wardrobe, and a new rifle. I wonder how he managed that. Oh yeah, I wonder how. Stolen a few other men's lives again. That's right. That's exactly on his way. Word of escape from jail in Canada had beaten him to San Francisco. However, so everybody was on the lookout. I'm sure there was his pictures were posted up all over every town. And so he's basically having to duck into every alley and everything. He can't be seen by anybody. And while in California, he ended up robbing and killing a man in an outlying ranch who had taken him in and befriended him when he was in need. And this is what we kind of briefly touched on earlier. He's hiding like he's hiding in California from everyone, as we mentioned. And this farmer finds him like hiding in his field, sleeping out there, and this guy kind of takes sympathy upon this man. Maybe saw some of himself, his younger self in him or something. Took him in. befriended him, took him into his home, and Boone just completely used him. This is the guy that Boone was sleeping on his couch all day while the guy would go out and farm his land.
Right.
This guy was cooking him meals, letting him stay there. They would drink together at night and play games. And Boone just basically used him up until he was ready to move on, and at which point he basically walked into the man's room while he was sleeping one night and shot him in the head and took all of his stuff.
Jesus.
And that was that.
Your service will no longer be needed.
Yep.
Wow.
And with that, he was on his merry way again back to Oregon. And we talked about how he just kept circling. He made his way. It just seemed like Oregon, Utah, made his way up to Canada a lot, Missouri, a little bit of Texas. So he was just kind of just circling around through states and just wreaking havoc, which made it hard to track him because they never really knew which state he was going to be in at any given moment.
Right. And then, if he had the foresight to lie, when we were talking about him when he was going to kill his cousin, we're talking about how premeditated that was, and he had the foresight to talk about Texas and then go to California instead of Texas and things like
he was
that.
Probably
so he was
leading people on all the time.
Exactly. He was constantly talking bullshit to everyone he met. And then most of the people that did know him intimately or know where he was going, they didn't live long. So it was very hard to track him during this time.
Yep. So he headed to Oregon, and while in Oregon, he went back to robbery as his customary means of support and killed several men at this time. And in 1862, he showed up in Florence, Oregon. Here, he had killed a fellow legend in the Wild West world, a guy named Dutch Fred. This man had a reputation as a fighter, and who Boone had actually been hired to kill. So if someone hires him to kill Dutch Fred, people are kind of tired of Dutch.
This is how the book starts. It's a great scene.
Yeah, yeah.
The book starts with this.
They have this showdown at a bar.
Yes,
Boone plans to basically coax Dutch into a fight by just kind of, talking shit to him until Dutch gets angry, and he's going to have Dutch kind of pull a gun out on him first, and then he's going to kill him or kill him with a knife. However it's going to be, kind of a case where it was either a mutual combat situation or Boone was actually having to defend himself.
Right.
He's going to coax Dutch into a fight that he couldn't win.
Exactly.
Except Dutch could win it. Dutch was bigger and actually kind of scarier than Boone in a real fight. However, Boone, as we said, doesn't mind how he has to win a fight.
That's right.
Yeah, he'll take a cheap shot if he has to. So you want to explain that whole scene if you remember it pretty good from the book?
Yeah, I remember pretty good because I was locked into it. Like from that scene, I was like, okay, this is gonna be a fun book. But so Boone approaches Dutch or whatever, and they have like this stare down and this small conversation, and then the people
they're in a bar, right? And Dutch is playing cards at the time.
Yeah, he's playing cards
when Boone walks in.
Yeah, he's playing cards. He's relaxed. He's chill, and I think Dutch has a knife on him, right? And then Boone has his revolver. Is that right? Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah.
So after they exchange words, it's kind of obvious to everyone in the bar, including the bartender, that this is about to get ugly real fast. So the bartender's like, "Why don't you guys turn in your weapons and you guys can take this outside, and just have a hand to hand fair fight out in the street." Well, they give up their weapons, and then Boone sits there. Boone's like contemplating it, right? He's kind of looking Fred up and down, and he's like,
I didn't want this kind of fight.
He's like,
where the guy's aware that we're going to fight and I don't have a better weapon.
He's like, you know what? I think I'm just going to head on out. If I can get my revolver back, I'll just, basically I'll leave you. I'm paraphrasing, obviously, but
he actually kind of in a way apologized to Dutch
he
too.
did.
And said, "I'm sorry, Dutch. Like I was a little drunk and I got out of line.
I got out of line. Just let me get my gun back and I'll head on out of here." And of course, the bartender stupidly gives him his gun back, and Dutch turns and shoots Dutch right there, and Boone turns and shoots Dutch right there in the bar, killing him instantly, and then walking out, leaving a room full of witnesses like he does.
Yep.
He doesn't give a shit. I was like,
yeah,
okay, this type of dude we're dealing with.
Pretty awesome way to start the book.
Yeah, exactly.
Because it really went into describing, Dutch Fred and how he was like a local legend and everybody feared him and no one messed with him. And,
it reminded me of how Wild Bill died, at a card table.
Yeah,
holding aces and eights,
right.
But he got snuck up on. He didn't even have a chance. But
neither man was killed very fairly. Dutch Fred was very very similar, like you said.
Very similar.
It's not like he had a chance. He was up for the fight, and then the fight got called off, and then all of a sudden, he just gets shot.
I remember
sitting there.
A line from Dutch. He was like, "I'd rather play cards anyways."
Yeah, right.
I remember that. I was like, man, he seemed like an all right dude. I'm sure he did his share of shitty stuff though to get to that level.
Yeah,
but,
no doubt.
Oh well.
Yeah, so due to there being so many witnesses to the Dutch Fred murder, Boone obviously had to leave town again. That fall, he turned up far north on the Fraser River in British Columbia. He's back up in Canada again. Mm-hmm. Here, he was once more in danger of starving in the wilderness, and here once more he was guilty of eating the body of his travel companion. So he kills. He has another guy traveling with him, eats that guy too.
God.
You know you're doing a hell of a character when it's just like, yeah, and then he ate another guy.
He ate another one. Yeah, another guy. Consumed again.
Right. Yeah. So while up in British Columbia hiding out, I mean, this put a lot of pressure on him, killing a legend like Dutch Fred in front of everyone at a bar. Word got out that he had fled up to Canada, and he was discovered yet again on the verge of death in the woods. And this time he was sent back by British authorities, and for a time was held at Portland for safekeeping, where he was going to be tried in Florence for killing Dutch Fred. However, somehow, yet again, he gets out of a sticky situation as the witnesses had disappeared and people had long ago lost interest in the crime by reasons others more recent. So basically, he's sitting in jail awaiting this trial for like 6 months. And during this time, he's writing letters to one of his oldest brothers, Old Tex, one of his oldest brothers, who he kind of always had this get out of jail free card. He knew Old Tex had a soft spot for him, and if he kept writing letters to him pleading, like, shit, I really screwed up, brother, I need your help. I killed this man in a bar over a fight or whatever, and if you could come down and help me out. And this guy, Old Tex, actually showed up in Oregon a few months before the trial was going to start, and actually started working the rounds, getting the story as to what happened, who was in the bar, who were the witnesses, and got to them, and either paid them off or threatened them to not testify against his brother, or else there would be repercussions. And so when the trial came, no one was there to point the finger at Boone, and without witnesses, there was no way they could hang him. So he basically walked.
Also, knowing Boone's history at this point, I'm sure people knew who he was. They had heard of the Kentucky Cannibal at this point.
Yeah.
Surely, right? Mm-hmm. And so if you know about him, then you know about the grudges that he can hold forever.
So if he does somehow get out, if you testify and he does somehow get off, if he escapes jail again,
which is highly possible. I mean, he's just got to dig out, right? Fucking dirt floors. He could be back in no time and coming for you, which he definitely would.
Yeah, and if Boone's crazy, how's his older brother going to be? He's coming to you and threatening you. He's just like, it's not worth it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So Boone had implored his older brother for assistance, and with considerable amount of money, Old Tex paid off all the witnesses or threatened them. Helm escaped justice and was supposed to have gone to Texas with his brother. So his brother, wanted him to travel with him down to Texas after he got him out. And he's telling him all these things that, maybe, Boone, you need to join the army. You need to do this. You need to do that. And of course, Boone wasn't about to be wrangled in by societal restrictions and things like that. So along the way, at some point, he ran off from his brother, and his brother basically wrote him off forever. That way, he used his one get out of jail free card.
Yep, that's all he needed him for, and that's how Boone did. He used people for as long as he needed them. He didn't give a shit what his brother thought about him after he was out of prison.
Yep,
he didn't care.
Yep. And at this point,
saddle again.
Yep, Boone headed off from his brother's party, took another one of his brother's men with him as a companion, as we know, of course. Which the guy never made it to Montana, where Boone ended up.
Oh, so shocker.
He makes it up to Montana, where he then joins. Man, it's just amazing the different elements to this. It's just like all the different lives he's lived. Because then he ends up in a gang called the Innocents, which is kind of famous. This is one of those famous Wild West gangs, the Innocents, led by famous outlaw Henry Plummer, who at the time was actually a sheriff of the area that he was running this gang. So he was like secretly running an outlaw gang that was wanted by law enforcement. But he was law enforcement. He was he's living this double life here.
Right. That's
he had
the
an
best way to
interesting
do
past.
it. I mean, who's going to hold you accountable when you are the one supposed to be holding people accountable?
Exactly. And I mean, you could do a whole other episode on Henry Plummer. He was another character, as well known as Boone Helm. And he had killed a couple men in suspicious circumstances. There was the first man he killed, I believe he was sleeping with the guy's wife. And when the guy came to him and started a fight or whatever, Henry Plummer killed him and claimed self-defense, And I think he'd ended up serving some time for that, got out, killed another man in suspicious circumstances, and made his way to Montana, where they really liked his character, and they ended up making him sheriff, where he then starts a gang to rip people off.
Nice. Yeah, maybe we should look into old Henry Plummer for the future.
Yeah, it could be a future case. So the Innocents were an alleged gang of outlaw road agents in Montana Territory who operated during the gold rush of the 1860s, preying on shipments and travelers carrying gold between Bannock and Virginia City. Things started to unravel, however, for the Innocents not long after Boone joined them, and this would be the undoing and finally the end of Boone. This was kind of the last chapter of his book, was joining the Innocents gang. He got roped into all their politics, and people were done with them. And by December 1863, the citizens of Bannock and Virginia City had enough. Men secretly met and organized, and they became the Montana Vigilantes. Masked men began to visit the suspected outlaws in the middle of the night to issue warnings, and they even dispensed rough justice by hanging about 24 men. When one such man by the name of Red Yeager, who was about to be hanged, pointed a finger at Henry Plummer as the leader of the gang, all hell broke loose. So they realized the sheriff of Bannock was actually the leader of this group that they were trying to take down. The residents were divided on whether Henry was part of the murderous gang or not, but one night, after heavily drinking in a local saloon, the vigilantes decided that Henry was guilty and tracked him down. And on January 10th, 1864, 50 to 75 men gathered up Plummer and his two main deputies, Buck Stinson and Ned Ray. The three were marched to those very same gallows that Plummer himself had built as sheriff.
Damn.
So the irony of that, man. Right? For real. Yeah. Ned Ray was the first hanged, followed by Buck Stinson, both men spewing epithets every step of the way. According to one legend, Plummer promised to tell the vigilantes where $100,000 of gold was buried if they let him live. However, the vigilantes ignored this as they gradually hoisted him up by the neck.
They're like, this is priceless.
I mean, if you truly believe he's the guy that's doing all this, then, I mean, what good is going to come from letting him off by him paying you? What do you think he's going to do after that? He's just going to continue to do that more because he's justified.
Right. Think of all the innocent people he killed to get that money that he's paying you off with.
Exactly. Yep. That dirty money. So a lot of those other outlaws may have talked under pressure, but Boone was not an easy cookie to crack. 3 men of the vigilantes did the dangerous work of arresting him and took him by closing in on him as he stood in the street talking. He claimed not to know what was wanted of him when he was brought before the judges of the vigilante court, and solemnly declared that he had never killed a man in all his life.
Damn.
Boone Helm says he's never killed a man.
Never killed a man.
They knew his reputation. They knew Boone Helm had not only killed many men, but eaten many men as well.
Right.
But he had the gall to sit there and tell him he'd never killed anyone, that he was a saint. They made him kiss the Bible and swear to this over and over just to see what lengths his perjured and depraved soul would go to. He swore on the Bible with perfect calmness. His captors were not moved by this, and indeed Helm was little expectant that they would. So, of course.
Oh, my gosh. Yeah, he don't care a shit about that.
No. He called aside one of them who declined a clergyman, and confessed to murder in Missouri and California, admitted that he had been imprisoned once or twice, but denied that he had been a road agent. I have looked at death in all forms, said Boone coolly, and I am not afraid to die. He then asked for a glass of whiskey and did a good many of these murderers when they were brought to the gallows, as did many of these murderers when they were brought to the gallows. By that time on, he was cool and unconcerned and showed a finish worthy of one ambitious thought to be wholly bad. I love the wording of this. So, yeah, I mean, he's just someone who is fully a bad person. It's just like, yeah, it is what it is. It's my time to die now. I've killed many men, and here's my turn. That's
right. That's right. I knew this was going to happen, and you're not afraid of it from the beginning. You have to come to terms with that type of ending. If you're
he
live
probably
that
accepted
life.
at any given day that he was going to meet his maker, living the way he was.
Yep, no doubt.
Yeah. Now, on this day that these men were said to be executed, some of these well-known outlaws, there were 6,000 people assembled in Virginia City to see their execution. They were fast rounded up and hung by the citizens. This place of execution was in a half-finished log building. The ropes were passed over the ridgepole, and as in front of the building was open, a full view was offered to of the murderers as they stood on the boxes arranged for the drops. Upon seeing his friend Gallagher hanged, Boone reportedly remarked, "Kick away, my old fellow. My turn next. I'll be in hell with you in a minute." Because I guess Gallagher didn't get lucky enough to have his neck break upon being dropped. He was basically strangling. He was kicking around, flopping around, and suffocating to death. So when the executioner approached Boone, he wasn't going to have them decide his fate. He was going to decide his own fate. He allegedly claimed, "Every man for his principles. Hurrah for Jeff Davis. Let her rip," and then jumped off the hangman's box before it could be kicked away, snapping his neck on impact. So even in the end, he didn't let them have the satisfaction of ending his life directly. He did it for himself.
Damn. That's the way he wanted it.
Yep. And if you're wondering who Jeff Davis was, he was basically a president in the Confederacy.
Yes.
Jefferson Finis Davis
in the Confederate Army. Yeah. Wow.
Boone Helm is still buried in Boot Hill Cemetery in Virginia City, and that is the tale of the Kentucky cannibal, Boone Helm. What a life he lived of depravity, and one of the worst individuals we've done. That says a lot.
Like I said, he's the Pan's Ram of the Wild West, man.
Yes, very, very might makes right mentality to him.
Yes, took advantage of whoever he had to, took what he needed to from them, and then disposed of them.
The sad part is that there was a lot of good humanity shown towards him. Like, there were so many people who were kind to him, and every single time he made them pay for it.
Every time.
Over and over again. Someone would try and help him, and he would end up a lot of times eating their ass for it.
Yep. I know.
Crazy.
Heartless, man. Heartless.
Yep.
Doesn't care.
No.
It's a true Wild West outlaw right there.
Yeah.
I mean, it's hard to find them like him, honestly, without any shred of dignity or honor. Like, it's hard to find them like that. Like, when we did Billy the Kid and Wild Bill and things like that, at the end, we're like, yeah, they did some bad things, but they're still kind of folk heroes.
Yep.
They still kind of did what they had to do. But with this guy, it's just a piece of shit.
A lot of times you could justify their killings, whereas with him, it was like there wasn't a single one. Not a single killing that was justified from the start to the finish, between stabbing his cousin through the heart because he wouldn't go on a road trip with him.
Right.
To randomly killing men on the trails to steal their stuff and a lot of times eat them. None of his killings were justified.
No, he was just a little spoiled brat, man. Yep. He really was. If he didn't have it his way, he wasn't going to do it. And if everything wasn't going exactly the way he wanted, he was going to flip out on somebody.
Yep.
And he thought that evened the odds.
Yeah.
Well,
no doubt.
Well, there's Boone Helm, guys.
That's Boone Helm.
True crime guys, in the desert we like a mirage. It's okay if you clicked on us cause you thought we was True Crime Garage. Now we ain't mad at you, sit down, let us talk at you. I'm talking to the creeper army, we out here making murder, get murder. True crime guys, in the desert we like a mirage. It's okay if you clicked on us cause you thought we was True Crime Garage. Now we ain't mad at you, sit down, let us talk at you. I'm talking to the creeper army, we out here making murder charming.